Welcome back to the Bears Talk Ireland podcast. As we continue to follow the Bears through the off-season, we're into OTAs now, and look, there's always something to talk about when it comes to the Chicago Bears. And today, I'm delighted to be joined from Barroom Network, Aldo Gandia, to come in and just maybe chat some Bears with me, and we'll see where things are at the moment. Aldo, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun talking football with you.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll say fun. I mean, the first thing I'm going to jump into is a topic I think that has been massive the last couple of weeks with the Bears. I think it finally seems to be receding, but I'm going to just go against that a minute and just get your opinion. It's the whole Caleb Williams, Seth Wickersham book. And I mean, what did you make of this whole kind of controversy, shall we call it? And now that Caleb has come out and actually talked about it and addressed it, do you think that's enough now for this to kind of be put behind us and to just move on, getting ready for the season?
Yeah, I definitely think this thing should be buried, but it will resurface again in September when the book is released. There will be other stories coming out of that. It could be a distraction early in the season. I think Caleb did a nice job of finally getting in front of it. He had an opportunity the week before to talk to the media and answer questions about it, and that probably would have been best if he had done that. But he didn't. He chose to do it yesterday, and he did it well. He addressed all the concerns. I think the biggest one was the whole watching film thing, because that was an indictment of last year's coaching staff, that they didn't really tutor him through that process. I think all young quarterbacks in this day and age, with the complexity of offenses and defenses and the specific visions that offensive coordinators have, they are really doing a disservice to young quarterbacks if they're not sitting shoulder to shoulder with them while they're watching film and addressing some of those issues. But for the most part, the issue of him stating that he wanted to become a Viking, hey, sometimes I wish I was a Vikings fan when they kick our butts, So that's just young people and a dad, trying to look out for their own best interests. And as Caleb perfectly said yesterday, what people are overlooking is that he said to Ryan Post, I want to be a Bear. He told his father, I want to be a Bear. And there's been nothing in his behavior that has made us think that he doesn't want to be here. So it's time to start, throwing some dirt on that one and moving on to the next scandal.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, look, it's obviously in the off season, things are that little more interesting anyway when you're trying to kind of get news out there. But I think he did handle it well. I mean, there were some questions that were answered. Again, you mentioned the watching film kind of question. Again, I think when the whole book is out, and as you say, it probably will come up again, when there's more context to that rather than the really exciting kind of sexy kind of quotes that are thrown out there to really get things going. Again, a bit more context to it, it may not be as kind of bad as we kind of thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
But look, it comes down like anything with football. If Caleb Williams is playing well and the Bears are winning, again, it'll recede very quickly. But like you, I mean, I think that he could have came out last week to kind of face it. He didn't. He came out this week, and I think it's done. So hopefully we'll be able to just put that one in the rearview mirror for a few months. And by the time it resurfaces again, the Bears hopefully will be able to just kind of breeze past it easy enough. But it is interesting, everything that, the Vikings are linked to this. It comes out around the time we play the Vikings.
Mm-hmm.
It mentions the Vikings in there. Maybe a strategic leak at some point just to get that kind of out there.
Yeah, I think Seth Wickersham has done a marvelous job, and the folks behind publicizing the book have done a marvelous job of selling copies of this book. I mean, heck, I'm going to buy it. Now, the book isn't entirely about Caleb. It's about the quarterback position and what the cultural influence that it's had on us. And it's about other quarterbacks' stories. So just the topic overall is one of interest to me. But they've done a good job, as you said, picking out the sexy stuff and teasing that out there. And I'm sure Amazon is trying to keep track of all the pre-orders that they'll be getting for that book.
Absolutely, there's no such thing as bad publicity, and fair play to the author Seth Wickersham. He did what he needed to do to get his book out there, and I think that's what we'd all do.
Absolutely.
But look, as I say, we can move on from that now. It's just been one of those things that kind of popped up, especially when there's no football. But just looking at the off season as a whole, although I won't go into too much detail on it, but when you look at the the moves the Bears have made in terms of the coaching staff. Obviously, Ben Johnson is that number one guy that everybody wanted. They bring him in. You have some interesting coaches in Antoine Randall, who comes with him. Eric Bieniemy, someone who got a lot of talk over the last number of years for a head coaching position, never really worked out for him. Dennis Allen on the defense as the defensive coordinator, mainly going to be that kind of defensive head coach to allow Ben Johnson to run the offense, and other coaches they brought in along with him, like Al Harris. I mean, were you happy with this coaching staff in the way it was put together, and in the very, very short window we've had with them so far? Are you impressed with what they've been doing, or the changes they've made within this organization?
I am very impressed. The highlight of my weeks are when Ben Johnson, the coordinators, anyone from the coaching staff gets in front of a microphone and starts talking football and Bears. I want to get to know these people better. And right now, everything that I have seen about Ben Johnson and his staff is very impressive. Ben has come in here with a no-nonsense attitude. He is instilling a tough culture. He's not going to take, poor body language. He's not going to accept coming out of the huddle in a lackadaisical manner. He is really, really doing a fantastic job of letting the players know that this culture has now changed. And in order to win championships, you got to play like a champion. And so I love that. The Declan Doyle appears to be kind of a genius in the making, or maybe he's already a genius. It's a little hard to tell exactly what his impact is going to be on the offense, other than doing a lot of brainstorming behind the scenes. But he's got a promising career in terms of helping to embellish Ben Johnson's ideas. And Dennis Allen, of course, the guy is a pro. You heard all of the defensive players in press conferences talk highly about Dennis Allen's work, his creativity, his attack style defense, and then the position coaches are all guys that appear to be really good at relating to players. Even Eric Bieniemy, who has a reputation of being a tough guy, likes to throw around F-bombs and will not hesitate to tell a player, "You're running like an old man," like he did in a video clip that's going viral right now when he told Kyle Monange that you run like an old man. And there was some good, positive back and forth between the two of them. So it appears like Ben, and he selected some of these people without really knowing them very well. He relied on advice from close friends and so forth, but he wanted this diverse group, this group that could, as a unit, build something very, very special, because they all have the same framework of working, which is tough love for these players. And I'm impressed with where they are so far, very early in their development.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I mean, you mentioned there, he didn't know all of these guys as before they came in, but he stressed that previously that, I didn't bring in my friends. I brought in the right man for the job, because that's what it takes. And I mean, I love his whole intensity so far. I think he really comes across. Look, you'll never know how that coordinator takes to taking that step up until you're into football season. So you don't want to go, let yourself run away too far with it. But so far, I've definitely been very impressed with him. The whole Cole Kmet issue kind of jumped up. People were using that to show how nobody is immune. If you are not doing it correctly, these guys are going to let you know about it. And you may be a local boy, Cole Kmet, who is part of that leadership group and a hero here in Chicago, or but if you don't get it right, these guys will let you know. And one thing I have noticed from all the reports I've got from OTAs, again, you don't want to go too early, but a lot of people are talking about there's an intensity there that they don't really remember seeing before with previous coaches, that there does feel like a difference. So again, look at it, it feels all positive. But yeah, what else can you say? It kind of looks good, and as you say, it just feels good that you feel like the adults are in the room now. And in terms of the Bears, the organization, Ryan Poles and those above him, were you impressed with the way they identified Ben Johnson and they just made it happen? He was going to be their guy no matter what, and they went out and they got it done.
Yeah. I really, when Ryan Poles came on board, I was a big fan of the approach he was taking to building rebuilding the team, which is to tear it all down, get rid of the big salary players. Let's get our salary cap healthy, and then let's start, building through the draft and so forth. I think he's made some mistakes along the way. And so I've been very critical of him. And when this past season ended up, I said, I'm not saying he should be fired, but I'm saying that the Bears management has to have some serious talks with him about his performance. This is where players you missed in the draft. Explain to us why, when you came into this organization, you told us you were going to build through the trenches and you bypassed guys who are now having quality careers in the NFL in the trenches. Why did you do that? And really explore with him. Everyone needs to be held accountable for their mistakes and celebrate their successes. And in the case of the Bears general manager, I'm not sure that has always been the case with the McCaskey family. Now, maybe Kevin Warren is doing things differently, because I do like the way Ryan Poles rebounded this offseason with his plan. He was laser focused on getting Ben Johnson. He, very astutely interviewed a lot of people. I was critical of that at first, saying, what, he's going to interview everybody, but he knew what he was doing. He's collecting information, and he was ready to pounce on Ben Johnson as soon as he was available, and he did, and it was a success. And his approach to the draft, we can quibble about a player here and a player there, but I for the most part, can see his vision and his and Ben's, and I think they appear to be working together well. So my confidence in Ryan Poles has been resurrected, and I hope that he comes through for us this year and at least gets us into the playoffs, and we can start playing some serious football in the fall.
Absolutely. I think I was there with you, because for me as well, I liked Brian Poles. I liked the fact that there seemed to be a roadmap and a goal. Just at times it didn't seem to kind of go the way you would have wanted it, or the way it felt like it was going to go. And while I didn't want him to be relieved of his duties, I questioned whether or not he should be getting a new contract. So it was that kind of awkward in between. But when you look at what he's done and what the Bears have done this offseason, does this feel like a pivotal season for him now? Does it feel like, you've had a couple of bad seasons, a couple of 10 plus, losing streaks that popped up? I mean, given everything they've done this year, does it feel like, you have to deliver this year? We've given you the head coach. You have that first round quarterback who is into his second season. We've gone out and we've rebuilt this offensive line and we've brought in these weapons. Does it feel like it's get it done now, or there'll be consequences? Or do you think the Bears are just, they really like Ryan Poles and he could probably get away even with another tough season?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there's a lot of different ways to look at this. The Bears could miss out in the playoffs, but we could see a very noticeable improvement in the organization in terms of how things are handled inside, how things are handled on the sidelines, how things are handled on the field. With this schedule, it's going to be very, very tough to get enough wins to get into the playoffs, and playing in a division where you had 3 playoff teams a year ago. So I don't want to say if he doesn't make the playoffs, he should be fired. What I want to say is I can hear and smell and see a winner in the making. And that's what I want to see with the Chicago Bears in 2025. Of course, want to see us playing in playoff games and playing for Super Bowl titles. But I can wait another year if we take a huge step forward in the development of Caleb Williams and the solidifying of our trenches and having good decisions made on the sideline, unlike the ones that Matt Eberflus made last season that cost us games and cost team morale. And so a lot depends on the quality of play. And I almost hate to say that because it sounds like I'm, a participation trophy kind of guy. But, you have to kind of be realistic. There's going to be a lot of obstacles in our way, the schedule, the quality of opponents. And so I would say if this team looks noticeably better, but the one-loss record doesn't necessarily reflect that, I'm willing to go another season with Ryan Poles. And again, who knows how long he's been signed for. I don't think there's any verifiable reports. So who knows?
People keep guessing and trying to find out, but nobody knows. It's that mythical contract length out there that nobody seems to be able to find out about. But again, it'll just be interesting to see how things develop, because you're right. I mean, first off, what you want, you can't win the amount of games you won last year and then expect next year to be winning the Super Bowl. It'd be nice. Mm-hmm. It's not impossible, but you just want to see that tangible proof that they are moving in the right direction. And obviously part of that direction is the players that they brought in. I mean, how impressed or not have you been with the players? I know they very, very quickly, before even free agency started, went out and got Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney. Then obviously when free agency started, they got Drew Dahlman and more. They kind of kicked on. I mean, how impressed were you in terms of the recruitment? One, in the the speed in which they went and done it, and the urgency in which they done it, and also in the actual players and quality of players and kind of holes they filled.
Yeah, I the speed of it was very, very impressive. It's clear that Poles was developing an off-season plan, and he struck gold. The big, of course, question mark is Jonah. Is he going to play at the same level he did under Ben Johnson 2-3 seasons ago, and be unlike the player who was with the Rams? Now, he had injury issues, playing out of position and so forth, so you could understand why things didn't go well for him, but he's quickly got to show that he is the right guard, and it's not another Nate Davis mistake. The Joe Thuney signing or trade was huge. I have been saying for a while, we need superstars in the trenches. Who did we have in the last few years who were clearly superstars? Joe Thuney is a superstar guard in the NFL. He is going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's got the Super Bowl rings. He's got the film, the tape, the temperament. He's got it all to be a Hall of Fame caliber player. And I'm really, really happy they got him. Drew Dahlman, perhaps the best center available. And that's going to take so much pressure off of our quarterback, Caleb Williams. So I was very, very pleased with that. The left tackle position, of course, is the position that we are all wondering, could we have done a better job of filling in? But I think that there is reason to have some confidence in the young players that we have there. Well, Ozzie Trapillo could be the answer at left tackle. He appears to be taking steps in that direction to claim that position. Karan Amagaje, he was it was unfair for him to be playing last season. It should have been a red shirt season, so he gave a bad first impression in that game that he appeared, the first game that he appeared at. But if you watch closely, you can see that this guy has the tools to be a quality offensive lineman. So, I expect when we see him this season that he'll play at a much better level than we saw in his rookie season. And then, of course, Braxton Jones. A lot of people get down on Braxton Jones, but man, oh man, have you seen some of the left tackles in the NFL? I mean, he's better than half of them. He really is. And he's not an all-pro. He's not going to be a superstar, but we could do a lot better than Braxton Jones and have in the recent past. So I really, really do think that Poles did a good job. And, we can go through the defensive line player by player, but guys like Grady Jarrett who bring in that aggressive mentality. This team has talked about playing more violently, talked about being tough, and you bring in a Grady Jarrett to instill that culture and to set the example with his own play in his own words. So I am impressed with what Ryan Poles did in the trenches. I think he could have probably done a little bit more, but I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was impressive how quickly they kind of came out firing and got some of those deals done. I mean, look, we know every year, Aldo, you cover the Bears, and, the offensive line is a topic every offseason, year in, year out. I mean, for me, as a Bears fan as well, this may be the first time in a long time I can safely say that 99.9%, I can name you 4 starters, injury permitting, on that offensive line. And there are some good players in there. And I think that's the kind of stability you want for Caleb Williams. And that's something that kind of needs to be sorted. You mentioned the left tackle position. Obviously, that's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, Braxton Jones has been in there and he's done a job for a 5th round pick coming in. But I mean, I think when you bring an Ozzy Trapillo in with a 2nd round pick, there's going to be a strong kind of push for him to hopefully develop into that starting tackle. I know there was talk of potentially Darnell Wright being moved. I don't like that idea. I mean, if you need to do it, you need to do it. But why not let that young man settle into the position he's been playing in and just fill the other gap? So, yeah, I think that's going to be fascinating. And then you mentioned Karan Amagaji. He was never brought in last season to start. It's just injuries happen, and that's the way it went. And he was more a player who had traits that looked like he had a really high ceiling. And, again, we'll see how that develops. But like you, I mean, I'm interested in where this goes. But as I say, if you have 4 players on that offensive line, good players who you feel are the starters, I mean, that's a much better position the Bears are starting from this season than they have done in previous years. And then obviously we mentioned Trapillo as a 2nd round pick, and that kind of brings us into the draft. How have you found the draft this year? Were you impressed? Are there any players that maybe stand out to you that you think could really surprise people? I know Kyle Monangai obviously gets a big mention. Me personally as well, I like what he does. Of everything I've watched, I am impressed with him. I think he has a good chance to at least cause some waves there in that Bears running back room. But for you, is there anyone that stands out, any like good or bad? Is there a move you think, why would you do that with that pick? I mean, how did the draft fall overall for you?
Well, excuse me. I think Post did a great job. The fact that he was able to get 3 second-round draft picks for this particular draft, where that was the round where you probably are going to get some super surprises. What I mean by that, guys who are going to have really, really good NFL careers. And the 3 picks that we got in that 2nd round could fill under that bill. The pick that I'm most excited about is Luther Burden, because this guy is what he can take a wide receiver screen pass and get 40 yards, get an explosive play because of what he does with the ball. I mean, he is phenomenal at yards after the catch, and they're also going to have him in the backfield in some place getting handoffs. So he's going to be that ultra offensive player. I do believe that he is going to have more yards accumulated than some of the other more prominent players. More yards, I think he'll have more yards this year than Cole Kmet, because at the tight end position, you're going to see Colston Loveland. Hopefully, he's injured and playing well, but he's going to get 500-600 yards. And so some of those yards are going to come from Cole Kmet's, but Luther Burden playing that slot and playing multi-positions, I think he could be a breakout player almost immediately. My only concern with Luther, because he's demonstrated issues with his temperament, he's really got to buy into this program. He's really got to buy into being a professional football player. He can't mope around if he goes several series without seeing the ball. He has got to block. No block, no rock is what is coming out of Hallis Hall. So he's got to do those things in order to really get the most out of his abilities. And his abilities, he could become a superstar slot wide receiver. And with Odunze and DJ Moore, those 3 positions could be yielding a lot of yards. But Colston Loveland, I like the pick. It was a surprise, no doubt. But, you go back. For me, I try to do my homework pre-draft, but after then the Bears drafts picks are chosen, you go back and you do the work and you see, I can see why this guy fits better in to this offense than Tyler Warren. I can see what they see in Ozzy Trapillo and so forth. So yes, I'm impressed with all of the picks. In that last pick, Kyle Monangai, he could be a lot of fun to watch because he could be kind of our poor man's Ashton Genty. There was a lot of hope that Genty would come to Chicago. Well, Kyle Monangai could, he's not as good a player, but he could provide some of those kind of highlights with how he plays.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, he's definitely a player who likes a bit of contact. He may not have that breakaway speed, but he has an ability to break tackles and keep going. And it's going to be interesting because obviously we look at the running back room there are certain question marks to the coaching staff, like this player or that player, and maybe a 7th round pick who potentially could have gone higher in other rounds had there not been so many good running backs. We'll see how he goes. The Luther Burden obviously is is very interesting, because I think that one can go both ways. On one hand, you've got a very talented wide receiver coming in, but there isn't the pressure to be the number one. So you might be able to go in there and settle without that kind of pressure on the shoulders, and let the other guys take the bulk of it. But then, as you say, he may have that mentality of, no, I want it. I want it now, and I want it all the time. So it'll be interesting to see how this coaching staff kind of manage that. But again, I'd be more confident in this coaching staff being able to do that correctly than the previous coaching staff. So again, that's going to be interesting. And what an awesome attack this team have now in terms of, tight ends, wide receivers, the running back. I mean, Caleb Williams is going to have options out there. And another question I kind of wanted to go to, it goes to Caleb Williams and the quarterback room. How important was it, or how good is it that they brought in a Case Keenum, an actual experienced quarterback, into that room? We know it was a very young room last season, and then that means that obviously Caleb Williams doesn't have that experienced head to maybe bounce things off. And if things were as bad as quotes in the book kind of popped out, if it turns out that's as bad as it was, then you're kind of leaving a young rookie quarterback on an island. How important is it that you have someone like a Case Keenum who can come in and just be there in the room with him and work with him?
I'll tell you, when the move was first announced, I'm like, why? We got a quarterback coach. We got guys to mentor him and tutor him. Why are we doing this? But listening to that press conference yesterday, listening to Case, listening to Ben Johnson, I get it. I totally get it. Now, when Thomas Brown, the interim coach last season, at a press conference right before, I think, the final game of the season, or it could have been right afterwards, he talked about how he and Caleb have had some talks, and that, frankly, I do most of the talking, he does most of the listening, and he kind of planted that seed that he was telling Caleb, you gotta work harder. You gotta do this. You gotta do more of this. You got whatever the specifics were, and he did not share many of those with us. It was kind of a look at what was going on behind the scenes, and it was that Caleb still isn't quite there in terms of doing the things that a young, talented quarterback has to do in order to play like a superstar in the NFL. With so many of these talented quarterbacks that come into the NFL and they think they can, get by with their athletics abilities and so forth. And of course, Caleb is phenomenal at creating explosive plays by running around in the backfield. And he was perhaps relying on that too much and not playing on time, which is the way quarterbacks win in the NFL. You take your 3-step drop, you plant, and you fire. You don't, you don't try to make an explosive play out of a play that was designed for 7 yards. So I think that this is a huge part of why Case Keenum was brought in, to help him study, help him look at film, to talk about preparation throughout the week, staying focused, telling him telling Caleb as a leader, you need to go tell this player that. All of that stuff that sometimes we fans take for granted. I think Case Keenum is here for that, and listening to him yesterday at the press conference, he seems like he's the right guy for the job.
Yeah, he does seem very impressive, and I think it's just good to always have that experience in there for a young player, just to be able to work with them and learn what it means to be a kind of an NFL quarterback. So again, we'll see how that kind of develops. I'm going to flip it over onto the defense, and Tremaine Edmunds is a player who came in with a lot of fanfare and hype. He maybe hasn't hit the heights that people would have hoped. TJ Edwards has maybe got all the plaudits of being the better move of the two players coming in. Now, again, take it with a pinch of salt. It's OTAs, but we're hearing good things coming out over the last few days, interceptions and plays. And he is a big guy that when he is in the right position, he can make plays. Do you think this Dennis Allen defense is going to benefit him? And do you think we can finally see the Tremaine Edmunds player that, we all thought we were getting, as opposed to the one that maybe hasn't just hit the heights that we thought he would?
Yeah, great question. I can't say with any great confidence that Tremaine Edmunds is going to have a breakout season, but I do know this. Dennis Allen is going to put him in a position to play at his best. And one of the things that's going to happen is with what the additions in the defensive line, that's going to create more space for Tremaine Edmunds to prevent getting lost in the traffic in the run game, because that was the biggest bugaboo that I had about Tremaine Edmunds' play. He was being washed out by offensive linemen, bigger offensive linemen. He would pick the wrong gap to attack the run game, and there goes the running back, for an explosive play. He's got to get better at that, and I think the additions at the defensive line will help him do that. And the fact that they're going to ask him to move out from the outside position to the defensive line, to the outside linebacker position, they're at least testing this out during these OTAs before training camp. And if he proves that he can handle those added responsibilities, there's no reason why this guy can't be a much better player. He's got the tools, that length. I mean, when you see him on the field, he just pops out because he's got the long arms, a long stance when he's at that linebacker position, and you just scratch your head. Why are you running that way when the ball's going that way? And stuff like that. So my hope is that Dennis Allen, that's one on his priority list. Let's figure out how to chart plays that are going to help Tremaine Edmunds be the player he's capable of being.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've put the right coaches in place to hopefully let him develop that way this season. So again, we'll see if that works out. And I'll just one last thing just to touch on OTAs and a player. It's Jaquan Brisker. By all accounts, he's back out there. He's as vocal as ever and doing what Jaquan does. I mean, how good, firstly, is it to see him back out on the field again? We know last season's injury, initially we didn't think he'd be out for as long, and then just week on week he wasn't there, and then obviously he was gone for the season. I mean, how good is it to see him out there, and how important is he in that safety position for this team?
Yeah, it's interesting because there were reports behind the scenes reports, unconfirmed publicly, that Jaquan was ready to play late in the season, or week 15, 16, 17, that he was cleared from a concussion protocol. But it appears that perhaps the coaching staff was unhappy with Brisker and just said, let him sit out, and perhaps using, the concussion thing as an excuse. So I'm hoping that he is back on this team. The slate is clean. Whatever he did last year is forgiven. We know the guy can play the position at a very, very high level. And so hopefully the coaching staff will have him focused. I'd love to see him spend less time on social media and more time with the playbook. But yeah, he's a guy that you really want. This is a contract year for him. Kyler Gordon got his extension, and it would be great if Jaquan could start to instill some confidence in us fans and in the Bears organization so that we could start talking about a contract extension. But he's got to learn how to tackle better and not lower his head to avoid those concussions. And he's got to be a little bit more focused on the team and instead of social media. But yeah, you're right. Jaquan Brisker, excellent pick. And if I could mention one other name, the linebacker in the draft, we were talking about draft picks, Ruben Hippolyte, didn't know him at all.
No, me.
I went to Dane Brugler's The Beast. He had no write-up on Hippolyte, just his numbers and stuff. So I'm like, wow, this guy could have been an undrafted free agent. Well, lo and behold, once you start doing the homework, you start to see that this guy has the traits. Like, I do a show with Greg Gabriel, and in our open every week, he talks about the importance of traits, and Hippolyte has those traits. Ryan Poles had a communication with Greg Gabriel, and he shared with Greg that they wanted to get faster at the linebacker position. So what do? They pick the fastest linebacker in the NFL draft. So they've added some speed. I'm really, really excited about watching him in camp and seeing what he can offer this team with his speed. He should immediately be a special teams standout. We'll see if he's going to steal some snaps away from some of the other linebackers, and we'll see how he does.
Yeah, I mean that is a fascinating pick, and it is going to be interesting to see how it kind of develops. Plus, I think there's going to be a bit of pressure on him there now. I mean, he is essentially taking Jack Sanborn's spot, so we know how everyone loved Jack Sanborn. So you got to step it up now if you're going to take his position there. But yeah, again, it's interesting, and he's the kind of player you do root for. You know, listening to his interviews and them talking. You know, I think he realizes the great opportunity he's got here for himself, and he has the talents, as you say, the traits and the speed. So if he can translate that to the next level, this could be a really interesting pick that Ryan Pauls and the front office have made. Aldo, really appreciate you coming on, taking the time. You know, if you want to let the guys know where they can find you, anything you've got coming up that they need to keep their eye out for.
Well, I'll tell you, we're constantly churning out material over at the Barroom Network. The best way to be exposed to it is go over to YouTube, punch in under search engine Barroom Network, and you'll see a whole catalog of recently produced shows, and all of our stuff that is scheduled for the near future will pop up there as well. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll get an alert on your device letting you know that we're going live with the show. Greg Gabriel, the former director of scouting with the team, and I do a weekly show every Monday. That's probably our number one show right now. For those people who are from the Chicago area, they may know Mike North. He is a part of the Barroom too. He's a 73-year-old legend in Chicago sports broadcasting. So we're happy to have him, plus a lot of younger, newer voices talking Bears football. So Barroom Network is, we hope people will consider checking us out.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I never miss it. A GTF, absolutely love it. It's brilliant to listen to. So obviously the guys need to if they haven't, and I'm sure anybody watching this already is well aware of it. But if you're not, absolutely get on there and check out that content. And obviously, thanks to everyone for watching and listening. Please do, like and subscribe and keep an eye out. There's obviously going to be plenty more coming up as this off season continues. Until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.